Punchout actually started out as an arcade game in the 1980s. In this arcade game, it was vastly different from the NES game that everyone knows and loves today. In this arcade game, instead of displaying the opponent and Little Mac at the same time in a cartoony sort of fashion and showing the whole arena, it actually had the camera located behind Little Mac, showing right through him to the opponent. Little Mac was displayed in a sort of wireframe sort of way that sort of gave you the feeling that he was there, but still gave you enough space in between the wires to look through. This game was vastly different as it was released for the arcade, which had a lot more power than the NES. Soon after the arcade's success, the developers that created Punch-Out decided that it would be good to make an NES port because the NES was doing so well at the time. They decided to get a licensing agreement with Nintendo to get Mike Tyson in on this deal. At the beginning of the game's development, the team realized that it would be impossible to have a direct port of the arcade game because the NES couldn't handle it. So they decided that it would be better to shrink Little Mac down and have the camera in a more accessible position so you could see the whole arena, Little Mac, and his opponent. NES's Punch-Out featuring Mike Tyson was actually not the first Punch-Out game released for the NES. Shortly earlier in Japan, they released a Famicom Gold cartridge entitled Punch-Out. This was a special gift for a Nintendo Famicom Golf tournament that was held in Japan. This did not feature Mike Tyson. Instead, the final boss was Super Macho Man, who was actually the second to final boss in the Punch-Out featuring Mike Tyson. Okay, so after Punch-Out featuring Mike Tyson was released and became the groundbreaking game that it is today, a couple years later Nintendo went into some problems. Their licensing agreement with Mike Tyson was about to run out, so they decided that if they're going to keep marketing this game, they need to change it up a bit. So they essentially got rid of Mike Tyson and replaced him with a fictional character entitled Mr. Dream. Mr. Dream is essentially the same as Mike Tyson in the game, so you can't really tell a difference. It just doesn't feel the same though. Would rather face an actual boxer and feel powerful, or just some made-up Nintendo character. Now that backstory is out of the way, let's start talking about the controls. The controls in this game are very simple because it was an NES game. You had a D-pad and 2 buttons. The D-pad was used to dodge in whatever direction you wanted to go depending on what area you pressed. And sometimes if you pressed down on the D-pad, you would actually duck against certain attacks, but not all the time. The A and B button were used to uppercut and punch. These controls were very tight and did not at all feel slippery when I played. The mechanics in this game are simple too, but are kinda hard to explain, so please just bear with me. At the top of the screen you have 4 things. You have your group of hearts, which displays how many hearts you have, which I will cover later. You have your health bar, your opponent's health bar, and then the round displayer, which displays how much time is left in the round and what round you are on. Okay, so let's talk about hearts. Hearts represents how many times your opponent can block you before you get tired. If your opponent blocks you enough so that you run out of all your hearts, then you turn blue and become tired. When you are tired, you cannot punch, and you have to dodge a certain amount of punches before you get your strength back and can attack back. Your health bar is very self-explanatory. Every time you get hit from your opponent without blocking, you take damage. Every time he gets hit without blocking, he takes damage. And once your health bar runs out, you fall down on the floor. And it just depends on how many times you've hit them down on whether they will get knocked out or not. Actually, if you knock your opponent down 3 times in one round only, which lasts only 3 minutes, I might add, you get a TKO, which is a technical knockout. And the same applies to you too, if you get knocked out 3 times in one round. In between rounds, you'll go to the screen where it shows you in your corner of the playing field and your opponent on his corner, and it'll have little text below his, like taunting you and saying his rank and where he came from. But above yours, you'll have your companion Doc, which is your coach in this game, and he will give you advice. And once you're done with this screen, just press start to continue on to the next round. After you've defeated an opponent or been or after you've defeated a certain amount of opponents and have gone to the championship of your tournament, you'll fight a title bout. A title bout is different from all the other types of fights because if you lose this fight, instead of having the option to rematch, you actually get ranked down a level and have to fight the opponent you fought before. If you fight a regular match and lose, you have the option to have a rematch. If you lose the rematch, then you get demoted down a level. If you lose 3 times in one game, get knocked out 3 times in one game, when continuous playing, then you get a game over. There are certain exceptions, like for the final boss Mike Tyson, 1 knockout, and it's game over completely. Or Mr. Dream, depending on what version of the game you're playing. Though this game may be fun, it only has 3 tournaments in it, so it may be fairly short. But it's not short for most people because it's kinda hard to nail down how to take down your enemies. That being said, every enemy has a pattern, so it may take you a couple of tries to actually figure out what the pattern for a certain enemy is. Now let's talk about variety. Whenever you have a sports game, you're not expected to get a lot of variety because it's a sport. It's one repetitive task one time after another. And Punchout pretty much doesn't have a lot of variety when it comes to gameplay. Every round's going to be the same sort of box and punching game. There's not a whole lot of new content in each level that will keep it fresh and exciting. But what does make it exciting is the interesting characters. There are characters from all different parts of the world that all have their own special themes, that all have their own special attacks. And that's what gives this game its flair. I mean, some of the characters in this game are well known in the gaming community, such as King Hippo. I mean, who doesn't love King Hippo? He's just a fat guy with a crown who's really easy to take down, but for some reason his ridiculous character made him well known. This game has a ton of variety from start to finish, and even though it is a short game, because it was on the NES, it was still fantastic. It's fantastic, but it's short and it gets repetitive, but it's still very fun.